All right, guys, we have, I don't know what episode number this is, but we have Evan Jarvis of Gripsed. Did I pronounce that
hmm
right?
You did. Yes, you did, sir.
All right, I practiced it a few times. We have Evan Jarvis of Gripsed. He's a YouTube video maker, mental game coach, poker coach. I'm probably a writer, blogger, lots of things. I probably left something out. But yeah, anyways, welcome to the podcast. Thanks for coming on.
Thanks, Daryl. Pleasure to be here. Really appreciate you having me on.
Yeah, that's about the best I can do on an intro, by the way. I butcher them usually. That was my best intro out of
I,
36.
I thought I thought the intro was supposed to be the part that you have down pat, and the conclusion you got to have down pat. So you sound really pro when you come on, and you leave them with a really pro taste at the end. But in the middle, it kind of doesn't matter what you say.
Yeah. Even when I make videos for TPE, I have no idea how to start them. They just go terribly. So there's so many places to start. And
Yeah, choose your own adventure, bro.
right. And I have the question I forgot. I guess tell people about maybe a bit more about what you do. What is Gripsed about, or Grips rather about?
Yeah, I mean, Grips has gone through a lot of iterations and a lot of transformations over the years, as I too have transformed and changed my wants and desires. It initially started out as a project to help people become the best poker players they could be. That was for a couple of reasons. The first was I wanted to connect myself with more like-minded people, and I figured that by sharing my teachings, my approaches, and whatever, I would attract those kind of people into my orbit. And the other reason that I started it was that I've studied learning for a while and learning methods, and I discovered that the most efficient way to learn, that which gives us the highest retention, is through teaching, because we have to be able to justify what it is we're saying, why we believe what we believe, and be able to back it up, and also answer random questions that
So,
kind of
so
further.
I'm curious about this. Where did you read this? Because I kind of backed in. I got really into education past 4 or 5 years. I started teaching a lot of poker, and then
Yeah.
2 years into it, I realized, hey, I'm getting really good at poker by teaching. Like, what's going on here? I didn't expect this.
Yeah. The place that I got the most information was the book called The Art of Learning by Josh Waitzkin.
Right.
You familiar with that one?
Yeah, it's one of my top 5 favorite books.
Yeah. So I think someone introduced that to me in 2014. And I think before that, I probably just got it from doing a lot of personal development stuff, Tony Robbins kind of programs, and reading a lot of books in that area, that it just kind of, the message was consistently the same, that the best students become teachers, and if we really want to learn something, we just want to be sharing it and getting other perspectives on it to further reinforce our understanding of it, and just immerse ourselves in it. So that's how it started, and it was really poker centric. It was really poker focused because, I was in the poker world. That's how I was making my living. I was very much focused on success and achievement and financial gain and making a spot for myself in the world. And after getting some good success and almost kind of getting carried away with the whole chase of fame and egos blowing up and whatnot, I realized that the chase was actually causing me a lot of stress and a lot of anxiety, and that there had to be more to it. And that's when I really shifted my focus towards spiritual practices, yoga, community, self-care, well-being, and really learning how to maintain myself and my energies and be efficient with my energies, as opposed to just trying to floor it 24/7 to get as much done as possible and get as much attention put on me and whatnot. So in the last year, I've pretty much not been playing poker. I haven't been even doing too much teaching because I've been really focused on immersing myself in these other practices.
Right. So when you were feeling all that, and remind me to get to Art of Learning because I think that's a book we should probably discuss.
Okay.
When you got to that point where you were stressed out and anxious, what made you seek out self-improvement, self-development? Where'd you get that idea? Or was it just, this is just the obvious path?
I'd always been doing it, but it was more about committing to it. And it was, I went to, you know, the PCA, right?
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
You know, the Atlantis Resort and all that stuff
Right.
they got there. You know about the yoga ashram that's like down the beach?
No, because the first time I went was 6-7 years ago, and I don't even think I knew what meditation was back then.
Okay. Well, so they have an ashram down the beach, and Tony Gregg told me I should check it out. And
What exactly is an ashram?
an ashram is just, I don't know what the best way to describe it is, but it's like a simple community. It's a simple place where everyone has pretty basic lodging, and it's very community centered. And you know, there's yoga, and there's workshops, and there's clean food, and it's just it's an environment that's conducive to a very simple, steady life where we have a lot of time to do internal reflection because there's not all the external stuff stimulating us out there and keeping us distracted. I think typically ashram would be for Indian disciplines. It's probably similar to the church, but because it's from a different background, they call it an ashram, is my best guess.
Right.
Because I don't know everything about it. I just know that when I went to the Shivananda and I kind of felt the vibe of being in a community, which was very different from having been in the poker world where everything is very competitive, everything is kind of, you're in a constant war zone. I was like, you know, this feels really good. This feels like it's something I've been missing. I'm going to spend more time in this, and I'm going to spend more time learning about these practices and going to workshops when I'm back home. And I just had a lot of good feeling, like emotionally I felt very good, and I was getting more into the body and more into the heart, and getting away from my mind and my obsessive thinking. I'm just like, okay, this is good. I'm going to keep doing this until I bring myself into a place where I feel at ease. Because, I mean, you know how it is from multi-tabling, crazy amounts of tables and playing tournaments where the stakes are constantly going up. Like, it just is all consuming, and it just pulls you into it. And gotta learn these practices to get back into the body and get grounded so that we don't get carried away being all up in the clouds and chasing those highs. And yeah.
Right. So this was not your first experience with meditation at the ashram?
No, so actually I first learned, I'd heard about meditation a fair bit back in like 2012. And in 2013, for the World Series of Poker, I was staying with my then roommate at the time, Griffin Benger, who is an awesome guy, hilarious human being, but in terms of his living space, he's an absolute mess. And he was nice enough to let me stay with him for free, so I can't have any expectations or anything. But within about 4 days of being there, I said, I can't handle this. This is way too much. I need a break. I need to quiet down. And a guy named Peter Vroom, who lived in LA, had reached out to me because of Gripsed. He'd watched my videos and said, I think I can offer you something that could help you. And so I went to stay with him for 2 or 3 days out in his place in LA, and he taught me my first formal type of meditation. And then I brought that back with me to Vegas and practiced it every day during the World Series, and I was able to navigate that carnival that is Rio.
Were you instantly into meditation, or what was your experience first doing it?
There was definitely some difficulties at first, because anything that's foreign, anything that's different than the norm is going to be hard to go into at first. So there was some resistance. But But I just practiced it, and it was very different, but it was nice to get a break. It was nice to actually be able to fully turn off without having to use substances to induce that state of being off. And it was nice to be able to give myself a break, normally being in such a fast-paced world and such a fast-paced place. So it was hard at first, and
I think people can't. I think it's hard to understand what it feels like to turn off if you haven't meditated. It's hard to talk about meditation with people who haven't done it. Can you,
absolutely correct.
how would you explain what it feels like to turn off, and how do you think you could explain that to someone who hasn't meditated before? Someone listening to this who, maybe is on the fence about meditation.
Well, the best kind of things I can say about it is you actually get to hear your own voice instead of other people's voices. So you actually get to be aware of what's most important for you at a deep level, as opposed to what's most important for you to do to serve other people's interests, because that's kind of what we're getting when there's external stimulus coming at us. Anyone's worked out, it's the feeling after you get that last rep in and you just finally get to sit down and relax and just let out a big sigh like, and you feel like you're in the place that you're supposed to be. Like I find when I'm in a good meditation, it feels like I've reached the destination that I was seeking for, even though I was unaware of it, because it's just a piece of total rest, total ease. Bliss is a word that comes up, but it's pure relaxation. So for people who smoke pot, it's that feeling when you've had just the right amount of hits. For people who drink, it's the feeling when you've had, 2 or 3, whatever your line is, but before you start to get really too far gone. For people who are into music, it's when you just hear that perfect song, that perfect track. It's just a state of pure bliss and inner peace and just like all around goodness. It's right. It's like an orgasm for the soul.
Yeah, I kind of I wanted to write and make a comparison of meditators to like drug addicts, just chasing the high.
Yep.
I mean, mostly as a joke, but a bit facetiously, but kind of being serious. And I think what's interesting about it for me, I typically don't get the super high from meditation, but the feeling is just shutting off. For me, it's just simply the thoughts just really, really slow down to a really slow point. It's like your brain is going 100 miles an hour and then just slows down to a crawl, and you're just like finally get a break, some kind of like reprieve from this thing you have to deal with all the time, this constant chatter, this constant, we're so used to it, and if you haven't meditated, you're just so used to it that you don't see it as something that's wrong, that constant inner voice, until you experience what it feels like to just even go a minute, to even go 2 or 3 breaths without that.
And I think there are like a couple good things to be said about the inner voice, the monkey mind, the chatter that goes on in the brain. And I find it's not something that ever really actually stops, but in meditation we really train our ability to focus our awareness and direct our awareness. So despite the fact that the thoughts will be going constantly, we can train our awareness to not pay attention to them. The same way, when you have you're at the grocery store or you're at an event and you're just trying to do your thing, and there's this one kid that's just making all this noise and being so obnoxious, and you just want to ignore them. Well, we actually can do the same thing with our thoughts, we just have to be told it's okay to ignore those thoughts. It's okay to focus on sensations in the body instead of the thoughts in the mind. And the other thing about the thoughts is,
Oh, so wait a second.
yeah,
You don't get the sensation of your mind almost becoming thoughtless. You don't get that.
I mean, it goes through phases. For me, usually there's still thoughts going, and it's kind of when I'm in a place where I've taken care of all the things that need to be taken care of, or when I'm in those routines of doing it a lot of days in a row, I get more to that still place. But sometimes I'm erratic with my practice. I'm not someone who's 2 times a day every single day for the last 2 years or whatever. And I can see the difference in the experience when I've been consistent versus when I've been inconsistent.
Right. And how do you think that's helped you at the poker table?
How do I think that's helped me at the poker table? Well, one area it definitely helped me at the poker table is learning to pay attention to what's actually important as opposed to all the distractions. Because I know in the poker room they have their cute masseuses walking around, they got all the TVs going on, there's always food circling the room. So a lot of this.
You got your iPhone.
Yeah, exactly. Oh man, the iPhone. Holy, my best times are when I just say I'm not going to touch my phone this whole session. So it allows me to tune that out and feel good about it. Meditation also helps with posture, and that creates clear communication from the mind to the rest of the body and from the body back to the mind. So the signals are more clear, my intuition's more clear, my reads are more accurate because the signal is more direct and more clear and not kind of meddled. So it helps with that. Also, I found that sitting, breathing, and just being content doing nothing and paying attention to nothing makes it a lot easier to deal with making big bets, whether it's I'm bluffing or whether I made a big hand where normally I'd get a lot of anxiousness and a lot of stuff building up. But now I'm just more at peace. I've made my action. I've done the best play I can do. There's nothing else to do but sit here and breathe. And since I've sat there and breathed with a wall for 30 minutes, having someone stare at me while I do it doesn't make it any harder. So it's a lot easier to just maintain my composure, have good posture, be more connected with my intuition, be more connected with the messages that my body is telling me and what's kind of more accurate versus what's just noise. Because I've practiced being like, oh, this is noise, don't need to pay attention to this. Oh, this is something that's coming from deep inside me, that's more important. And I also...
All right, so
yeah.
what do you mean by messages from your body?
Well, like central nervous system, right? The spinal cord and everything is connected to the spinal cord. And the more, it's kind of like a highway of information, of impulses coming from the rest of the body and from the senses going to the brain to be interpreted. And the more clear those highways are, the more immediately we can get the message. If there's a lot of traffic on those highways, if there's a lot of stuff blocking it because we have poor posture or, I don't know, things in our body that are blocking the flow of that, or stuff that's slowing the flow of that, we're not going to get the message accurately. It's kind of like, that game Broken Telephone?
Right. Mm-hmm.
It's kind of like that, where the cleaner and clearer your system is, the more accurately you're going to interpret the sensations that you're getting from, your eyes, your ears, your nose, your mouth, your hands, whatever. And because we have multiple intelligences. We have the brain, we have the heart, and we have the gut. And they're constantly sending us signals. So the more clearly, the more smoothly they can flow, the more accurate the message will be received, as opposed to, misinterpreting what it's trying to really tell us.
So is it like sense. Is it ever like someone makes a big bet on the river and you just get a feeling in your body that he's bluffing and you just call with ace high on the river and win?
Yeah, like I don't make a ton of big hero calls.
Right.
I don't make a ton of big bluffs.
It doesn't have to be like that, like exaggerated of an example, but is it just like you're in a hand and you just intuitively get a feel or as a sensation that someone's bluffing and you call based off that?
Yeah, your intuition's just more on point. You can tell, you can read when someone's feeling more uncomfortable versus when they're confident and secure. Just a little bit more, and it's easier to trust the intuition the more I've learned to just listen to myself and go with what my gut is telling me on a day-to-day basis, the easier it is to then trust that when I'm under a pressure situation at the poker table.
Right. And when you say go with your gut, it's like a physical sensation that you're feeling.
Yeah, it's just like a knowing on a deeper level where you don't have to worry about the math and you don't have to think about, combinations and what part of his range is that. You're just like, this guy is not confident right now. He doesn't have it. I'm just going to call the real feel player approach.
I experience, I think every poker player just experiences, if you've been playing long enough, this experience of, I don't know why, but I have to call here. This guy's full of shit, or this guy has it. I'm going to fold. But I don't connect that with a physical experience. I kind of just connect that with a subconscious thing in my head.
Yeah. Well, what is your subconscious based on? Where is it getting its information? Is it not interpreting some of the signals that are coming at you that are beyond the understanding of your brain?
I think it takes in way more data than I can imagine.
Yeah. So it's taking in stuff that is beyond the capacity of your brain. It's going to your deeply rooted kind of animalistic instincts. And it sounds like your intuition's fairly charged, fairly accurate, fairly trustworthy.
Right. So, playing devil's advocate, someone sitting here and just like, Evan, this is fucking bullshit. You don't feel sensations in your body when you're playing. You don't know what you're talking about.
Yeah. I would tell that person they need to learn how to feel. Maybe they need to go dancing. Maybe they need to exercise. Maybe they need to go have sex with a woman or something, or get into their body and develop those senses. The same way we have to develop our poker game through rigorous studying, we have to develop our feel by doing things which actually use our body. Someone who's probably going to say something like that is someone who's very heady, someone who's very much focused on, books and information and knowledge and all the kind of we're talking left brain stuff, right? Left brain's the logical side. Sometimes I get them mixed up, but I think it's the left brain oriented stuff that's all about information. It's all about the mind, and just they're all up in their head. They just haven't spent time in their body, so they aren't aware that that's a reality. But it's just something that once I've spent more time in, I understood that's an intelligence too. And
what was your baseline before that? Were you more of a heady person before that?
Yeah. I was in the school system. I did my books and my mathematics and all that stuff, and I was all about my mind. I was completely stuck in there. That was the only intelligence that I believed in. And it was only through firsthand experience of doing more stuff to get in the body that I realized, there's some wisdom in this too.
What did you start with, or perhaps what was your first kind of aha moment? Hey, this is an actual thing.
It was probably when I was doing yin yoga, which is a style of yoga that involves long held stretches, and memories were coming up that I had completely forgotten about. And I asked my teacher, I'm like, yo, what is this? Why are these thoughts and feelings coming up? And she's like, because your memories are stored in your tissues. And when we stretch those tissues, it gives those repressed memories a chance to be experienced and felt and interpreted by the conscious mind. And that's when I said, okay, there's something to it. And the deeper I got into my practice...
wait a second. So yin yoga, it's called.
Yeah, Y-I-N.
Like yin and yang yoga.
Like yin yang, yeah.
Right. And what What type of positions would you have to hold?
I mean, there's way too many to list.
Right. Is it any of the typical like yogic positions like downward dog or
Mostly, no. They have slight variations and slightly different names, but the typical yoga positions will also do the same. Because, like, downward dog, if I'm not mistaken, stretches all of the energy channels in the body, so you get access to kind of all your organs and all the different informations that they have. That's actually a really good stretch. I think I'm going to do it right now. But I learned that the different organs in the body house different things. Like the kidneys house fear, and the liver houses anger, and the heart houses passion. And I don't remember what the lung and the spleen do off the top of my head, but they each have a function.
Did you learn this like experientially, or was this something you've read or talked to someone about? Where did you learn that?
Combination of both. And I think it always should be, when it comes to learning, it always should be a combination of both, getting some book learning, some mentor learning, and some firsthand experience. But yeah, in doing that, I realized that, each spot whole houses different things. And when we stretch the lines that coincide with those organs, we can actually focus on that one specific thing. So if we want to focus on fear, we do practices that stretch the liver lines and the liver meridians. And then all our repressed anger stuff would come up, and then we have a chance to examine it and either accept it and release it, or decide we want to keep holding on to it and keep housing discomfort in the body.
I imagine the repressed anger ones must be really intense.
Yeah. Oh yeah. None of this stuff is comfortable to do, but it's a lot more comfortable to get rid of the rock that you've been carrying around in your shoe for the past 20 years than to keep walking with it for the next 40.
Right. Yeah. I remember, I don't know if you've listened to Elliot Hulse on YouTube.
He's the reason that I started getting into the body.
Yeah, his stuff on the body is incredible.
Yeah. I'm pretty sure that most of Elliot Hulse's stuff is from traditional Chinese medicine, Qigong and Tai Chi. And he talked about Dr. Wilhelm Reich, who I haven't studied, but he does the bioenergetic shake. Like, I think most of the stuff comes from traditional Chinese medicine, and then like Kundalini yoga kind of stuff, because in those practices they have all the shakes and all the stretching and the breathing techniques that really charge the body and get the intelligence going. But yeah, it's good stuff. It seems really out there. When people hear about it, they're like, oh, that's crazy. But I thought that too, and then I started trying some of his stuff. I'm like, well, it's working, so there's something to it. And this is ancient wisdom that's been around for thousands of years. It's just not been made popular in the Western world because, we know better than the rest of the world, right? There couldn't be anything they have to offer us.
Yeah. The thing I find most interesting is how you can use your body to elicit motion, and I'm nowhere near the level you are. I'm way more heady. Mm-hmm. But I remember, I'd have experiences of if you're holding on to like anger or sadness, you're kind of repressing it, and you just put on some music and start dancing. Mm-hmm. I think at some point you're just gonna like break down crying or something. I don't know if you experienced that, but I was just like, listening to music, dancing, all by myself, being a fucking weirdo.
Yep.
And just like, all of a sudden, I'm just breaking down crying. And it sounds super weird, but it's really interesting being able to fight problems you have with your mind and your head.
Yeah.
Like, especially stuff like negative self-talk and depression.
Yeah.
With your body rather than your mind.
Yeah. When you had this experience where you were just dancing and you got into your body and then you broke down crying, was it to do with an experience that at the time that it happened, you weren't able to process the emotion, so you just kind of froze and bottled it up? And then this time later, you and now are in a safe environment where you could actually revisit it and give it the full expression that it warranted?
Yeah, it was a really bad time in my life. My wife and I were separated for like 3 months or something, and
Mm.
I was mostly just holding in the emotion, like, "Oh, I'm fine. This
Hmm.
ain't nothing," you know?
Yeah. Be a man, right? Toughen up.
Right. Exactly.
Yeah. And yeah, I find that's it. I had the same thing with my deceased mother, where I was watching one of Elliot's videos, and someone had asked a similar question about a deceased loved one, and Elliot's like, "Oh, you just need to go cry, man." So that night, I went to my living room, and fortunately, my roommates were out of town, and I just induced the crying state and moved through a lot, and felt a lot later after, because emotions are just it's like having a backpack full of sand. Every extra emotion that we hold on to that we didn't process is just extra weight that we just carry around and
That's a
carry
great way
around.
to put it. Yeah.
Yeah.
Right.
um
So how did you elicit those emotions? And you don't have to. I mean, obviously, it's a personal question. Feel free to attack this any way you want.
I for that one, I just followed what Elliot suggested, which is you kind of fake cry until it becomes real.
Right.
Like, you just make the sound like huh, huh, and then eventually it'll just start coming out because you're kind of warming up that kind of system to engage or whatever. Same thing with laughter. You got
I,
repressed
I
laughter.
was
Just
I was considering joining in with you. Just
yeah,
us both doing that for like 2 minutes straight.
just get a good old fashioned cry going on.
I wish
And
I
do you
could.
find that usually the crying is followed by laughter? Like, once you get it all out, that then you just start laughing and you feel really good after?
I feel really good afterwards. Yeah.
Yeah.
But
Yeah.
I initially viewed crying as, you're a fucking pussy. Like, what are you doing?
Yes.
But now it's just, this is a strategic thing you do to get rid of emotions, express your emotions.
Yes. Emotions are there to be fully experienced and then to be moved on from. They're constantly going to be happening, ebbs and flows, highs and lows, but all that they want is to just be felt fully, expressed fully, and that's it. We don't have to carry them around. We don't have to be them. They're just kind of states that we go through. They're not our identity. But yeah.
Right.
And yeah, society totally. I mean, you're from America. I'm from Canada, and it's all about, like, don't feel your emotions. If you feel bad, that's wrong. Let's numb that. And I think it just leads to a lot of problems later in life if people don't face their emotions or don't express their emotions, because then you build up all these other habits and stuff around not expressing emotion. That's like, I don't know what the percentage would be, but it's probably a third of being human is emotion. So if you're just like cutting off a third of yourself, while you're limiting a lot of your potential and capabilities and resources. But that's what we've been brainwashed with and spoon-fed since a young age.
Right. So I think Tony Robbins talked about it, and something I thought about a little bit a few years ago. But I feel like every emotion has a corresponding action that you need
Yeah.
to take.
Yeah.
And I'm wondering, how do you process emotions? Like, so I guess the first step is analyzing what you're feeling. Well, I don't know, just take me through, I don't know, how this might work for you.
I mean, I don't really have a kind of checklist or anything, because that's kind of, I feel like that's kind of it. Emotion is you just drop it in the flow and you just let it happen. Whatever needs to happen will be expressed, and it's like we can't deal with emotions with our brain. We have to deal with emotions with our heart. We just have to feel them fully, and whether it's crying, whether it's laughter, whether it's screaming, is one that a lot of people have repressed, need to get a screaming, whether it's shaking, whether it's jumping, whether it's rolling around on the floor. All that's required is, you just give yourself full permission to do whatever the fuck you need to do, and not worry about how it's going to be received, and not worry about being judged. And then you just do it, whatever it is. And sometimes
You got to be willing to look weird. That's for sure.
yeah. Yeah, and like sometimes I'm in a social setting or outside where I don't feel it's okay to express that emotion. But when I get home or when I go into the float tank later that night, you
Whoa, 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 whoa! You have a float tank in your house?
it's not in my house, but it's 2 blocks away.
Oh,
I moved to a new apartment so that I could be close to the float tank.
that's awesome.
It's essential. But I'll go in there and I do a lot of like singing in the tank. I do a lot of sound. Different pitches vibrate different organs, which, like, if you really want to get analytical, look up the organ networks from traditional Chinese medicine. Look up the 5 or 6 healing sounds from traditional Chinese medicine, and look up the 8 silken movements from Qigong.
Eight.
And
What kind of movement? Silken?
8 silken movements. It's also called the 8 blockade or the 8 brochet. And basically, the Chinese have figured out the movements to work with an organ and heal the emotion, the sounds that go with it. They even have foods that go with it. But like, if you want the scientific approach, they've kind of figured it out. But I
take like the heady analytical approach to most of these things.
Okay.
Yeah, but not that it's superior in any way. It's just that's kind of just my learning style, basically. Like,
Yeah,
it kind of
that's
has
what
to
you're
start
used
from
to.
there. Yeah.
Yeah.
Right. So the most difficult one that I deal with is numbness, and that's my most like common. I think I would guess, and I don't know. This might be bullshit, but I think a lot of heady guys, they're pretty good at detaching and becoming numb, and it's just really hard to feel when that's just a state you're used to being in. This
Yeah.
state of numbness. How do you reconcile that, for lack of a better word?
Yeah. Okay. So what's been most helpful for me with that is self-massage. So just putting my hands on my body.
Is this like a fancy way of saying jerking off?
No. Although there is a science to jerking off too. That since you're heady and you like to learn about that stuff, look up the book "The Multi-Orgasmic Man" by Mantak Chia, and you can find out about that. But actually, jerking off does activate the sexual energy, obviously, which is our creative energy, which is our emotional energy, and it can kind of flood the system. But the problem is, as soon as you ejaculate, you're done. So the key is actually to jerk off without ejaculation is how you overcharge your system with emotion.
I love where this conversation's going, by the way.
Yeah. But before you took me off a tangent there, just self-massage is just, you rub your calves, you rub your hamstrings, your arms, chest, whatever. You just put your hands on your body, because when you put your hands on your body, you are directing blood flow there, you are directing chi flow there, and therefore you are directing your awareness to that area.
All right, what the fuck's a chi flow?
Chi? You don't know about the chi?
I don't know about the chi.
Chi is like, have you ever felt like static electricity? Mm-hmm. Okay, think of it like that. It's kind of like the electrical impulses that are going through your body constantly. Same, it's like, the signals that go up the central nervous system to activate the brain and stuff. I think that's pretty much what chi is. I could be wrong, because I've only been practicing Qigong for, 5 months now. But that's my understanding of Qi. Qi is kind of the electric current that runs through the body that leads to a lot of the actions and movements and whatnot.
So, all right. Sorry. So this podcast, a lot of tangents. How do you how do you practice Qigong? Because I'm going to forget, and I find this really interesting.
You want to find a master. You want to find people who practice Qigong. Qigong is one thing that you do not want to learn from a book. It is one thing you do not want to learn from videos, because everything is very specific in it, and there's a specific reason for each of the positions. But actually, the art of learning, the martial art he got into, Tai Chi, Chuan, push hands, it's the same as Qigong. So if you look for Tai Chi, it's the same as Qigong. But I think almost any martial art would give you a similar benefit and would teach you how to connect with the Qi that flows through your body. Yeah.
Right. So when I think of Tai Chi push hands, I think of like these gurus and stuff, and their students would fly at them, and the master would just touch them. They'd go flying across the room.
Mm-hmm.
Have you heard about these things like Tai Chi grandmasters and stuff?
Yeah, I've seen the videos, and the guy I train with is pretty powerful. But that is the Qi energy that, okay, so you have to root into the earth, and then you're pushing into the earth when you're doing your movements, so you're actually getting like, it's not the muscles that do the force. It's some whole other stuff that I haven't practiced long enough to really speak about it as an expert, but I can tell you it's real.
Right. So the way I view those things is that I absolutely believe that these people are having this experience and that it is a real experience. I just don't know if I believe in the explanation. Like, I believe that this is what's happening and that this is what's going on. I believe in kind of the power of the mind, that if two people truly believe in something and are absolutely convinced that something is real, that it's going to happen. Like, I talked to this guy, life coach. You might have heard of him, Mike Rotowski or something.
Doesn't ring a bell.
Okay, so I was talking to him, and he talks about he could just touch a girl, right, and make her orgasm, but she would have to like believe in the process or whatever. And he goes through this explanation of like energy transferring and all that, and that's where we kind of get lost. Like, I mean, it doesn't really matter how or why it happens to me. Like this, it's like the same thing as like the placebo effect. I just think the mind is so powerful that if you believe in something, if two people absolutely believe in something, they could kind of just make it happen.
Yeah.
Does that seem like an unreasonable position?
Well, I mean, it's the position of a mind, for
Right.
sure. That's what the brain would want to think. I mean, it's just like we have to acknowledge that energy is a real thing, and that there are more forces in play than just thought.
Right.
And yeah, I mean, we can manipulate our minds to manifest a reality we want and have more likelihood of creating the reality we want, but there are still natural laws at play that I don't think one can just choose to overcome with the mind. Like, can someone just say, I don't believe in gravity and walk off a cliff and they'll float? I don't think so.
Right.
So I think there are certain natural laws at play, and I think the natural laws have to do with energy. And it's one of those things where once you feel like, okay, there is something going on here, but the same way we have to go to the gym to build muscle and rest and fuel and all that stuff, to develop chi, we have to go through these slow, steady movements to cultivate the strength of it and to really feel into the subtle sensations of what's going on.
Right. So there's two stories that come to my mind. So one I heard on Rogan a few years ago, and it was about this Tai Chi grandmaster, and he has videos of, just touching people and they fly across the room. And he was challenged, someone who was outside of Tai Chi into like a different martial art, one of the more Western type of ones, for lack of a better word. And the guy just absolutely got his ass kicked, and none of his techniques worked or anything like that.
Yeah.
So that's story number one that comes to mind, and which makes me think that. And story number two is, I don't remember where I read this, but they convinced someone, they had them close their eyes, they convinced them that they were being touched with like a burning hot pan. And when they weren't, they just touched them with something completely normal. And when they did, their hand actually got, boils and like burn marks on their hand.
Yeah.
And I guess that's what makes me kind of skeptical. Does Tai Chi work on someone who doesn't believe in Tai Chi? And maybe that's like one story that I randomly heard 3 years ago on Rogan, and I'm probably butchering it because it's so old. And that other Pan story I'm not fully sure of. It's just, I don't know if, I just don't believe that if a Tai Chi grandmaster came to me, I don't know if it works on randoms. I think it has to work on people who believe in it too.
Yeah, I mean, I can't say anything with definitive authority because I haven't used it to fight. I purely use it for the healing art that it is and increasing circulation and stuff. So I can't say definitively either way with that.
I guess what I'm saying is I don't really care though. I
Yeah.
think like it doesn't really exactly matter, and you definitely have a good point that energy is a real thing, and how many people, especially in Western society, spend any time studying all these like natural concepts.
Mm-hmm.
And I've spent very little time. I'm actually going to read a bunch of this stuff. So, I mean, I'm so ignorant when it comes to energy and nervous system and, I mean, all the insane things that can be going on in your body. But
Yeah.
I guess I don't know. I think it's an interesting point that it doesn't really matter what it is exactly.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
that was a long tangent. But I think you seem to disagree with what I'm saying, but I think you also agree that it doesn't matter either.
I mean, I don't really have a strong opinion either way. So I don't even know that I would say I disagree. I think if something works for someone, even if it's purely placebo, then they should keep doing it. If it's, restructuring their cells and restructuring their body in a positive way, even if it's purely just from some belief that they have, then they should keep doing it.
Right. What's wrong with placebo? Why is placebo less good?
Nothing. I mean, it's just all this comparison bullshit that Western society wants to figure out, like, what's the best and what's the worst and all this and that. Like, who cares? If something works for you, do it. And, like, don't... Like, I think the big thing is people in the West commonly want you to justify and explain why you do what you do and have to break it down. And sometimes words don't do it justice. Sometimes there are things that are beyond the realm of word and beyond the realm of definition. It's like, I just do it because it works.
Right.
And when someone's like, oh, you need to prove it to me, I just kind of respond like, well, why? Because with this stuff, I don't try to win people over to it. If they're curious about it, I'll happily share it and I'll happily invite them in and offer them whatever information they want. But if they're like trying to get me to prove to them why it works so that I can sell them over and win them to my way of thinking, I just could care less. Like, I couldn't be bothered because I'm not out there to say my way is the right way or what I do is the best. I just do what works for me. And I think that kind of everyone should do the same so long as it doesn't hurt anyone else in the process.
Right. Yeah, and I wasn't trying to put you in that situation, but
No, I know you weren't.
Yeah, like as podcaster, I want to give like, I think it's like an interesting alternative, especially for like more heady guys to kind of think about, which is like a category I fall in. And
Yeah.
honestly, I feel like I'm in a situation where I was a lot more in touch a few years ago, and I kind of lost a lot of that, and becoming more heady, and it's really hard for me to find the balance with going hard at work and being like a good family member. I don't know if you've experienced that. It's like my brain just goes into like grind mode or something, and I become overly logical and kind of detached and emotionless and rigid and strict.
Yeah. Yeah, totally. I mean, it's a very masculine way of being, to set goals and go after them and be on the pursuit of the agenda and not have time for, emotions and feelings, distractions, and whatever you want to call them.
All right, so what do you do? Because if someone looks at the body of work you've created, you've absolutely have to put in tons of hours. I mean, go to your YouTube channel, go to your website. I mean, the amount of just the amount of knowledge you've conveyed in the past hour, like a ton. Like, how do you find that balance, or what's that
Okay.
like?
So that's something I struggled with a lot, and I still struggle with somewhat, because I recently have been, connecting more with the feminine energy and being more free flowing and kind of the doing whatever. And the business people who are around me and who support me and work with me are like, come on, man, you got to get some stuff done. I'm like, well, sorry, I'm not in that zone right now. I just have to go with my flow. And I think it really comes down to embracing the seasons and embracing the changes and embracing the cycles of the day.
Right.
And knowing that there are times of the day where you want to be, on your logical, on your process, on your goal setting, on your achievement. And there are other parts of the day where you want to just go more into the free flow and go into feeling and, connect with your woman or your partner or play with your kid or do something fun, because that also nourishes part of you too. We have this inner adult and we have this inner child, and it's important to pay attention to both of them, or else we'll feel inner turmoil. And I can only say that because I've been the workaholic. I mean, from, probably since I started playing poker in like 2006 till probably like just this year, I was a complete workaholic because I was obsessed on achievement, because deep down I felt that I wasn't good enough. So I had to do something to prove to everyone that I was good enough and that I was deserving. And that just gave me this insane fire and this insane drive. But it came from a place of incompleteness. And then when I just kind of shifted and just said, I accept myself for who I am. I love myself for who I am. I love myself for my strengths, for my weaknesses. Suddenly, that fire wasn't quite as strong anymore, because I was more able to just be comfortable in my own skin and be at peace. And so I didn't have to do all this extra achievement to get the approval of other people so that I could feel okay. Because when I didn't have the love and appreciation from myself, I felt I had to seek it from the external world. And so I just had to do to try to get it. And I found that that's an endless pursuit. It's a tireless pursuit. And it's much easier to just cultivate it from within and be okay with the shortcomings and whatnot. But it's about cycles. There are times of the year when we hibernate, like wintertime, and we do our planning. And then in the spring, I think we kind of plant and water our crops and work on our ideas. And then in the summer, things bloom and things are in full effect. And then in fall, we kind of harvest the fruits of our labor and then plan for the next season. And it's just about saying, okay, there's sometimes I'm working hard. There's sometimes I'm planning. There are sometimes I'm relaxing. There's sometimes I'm just celebrating and enjoying what I've done. And if you can cultivate that on a daily basis, right, where you have parts of your day where you plan and you exercise, you do your passion and you feed yourself and then you relax, then every day has the complete cycle and you'll touch all your bases. Right. And if for 1 week you have to go extra hard on work, it's okay because the other areas of your life are in order. Nothing's been neglected for too long.
So this is a feeling that I get really often. Like, I'm fighting the current all the time. Like, I want to force this type of action, but the situation doesn't call for that. But it feels like I intuitively have that feeling, but I can't exactly figure out what I'm supposed to do, and I don't exactly trust that feeling because I'm more of a heady dude. But I'm like in tune enough to be like, you're kind of fighting the current right now.
Yeah. So are there times when you get an insight as to what you should do, but it's just something you really don't want to do? So instead you try to figure out something else?
Yeah. Yeah.
that's usually it. Usually it's like the flow is there, and the flow is always be like, oh, I don't want to deal with that. And it's like, okay, then cause yourself a bunch of turmoil. Whereas if you deal with that, then the next step will become obvious, and it'll probably be a good one. But we got to do some hard stuff too in life. It can't be all fun and games, and it can't all be achievement and success. We got to deal with the failures. We got to deal with breaking the bad news. We got to...
Negativity is important.
Yeah, we have to experience those. There's no denying it. That's part of life. So to try to avoid it is just, you're going to go crazy.
Right. Right. So I'm curious what a day like yours looks like now. So do you have a schedule? Are you like, I'm working these hours, or is it just all by feel?
I am starting to develop a schedule because it's something I've needed for a long time. And when I was making all the content, like Project Get Me Stacking and the hand history reviews, that's when I had a pretty consistent schedule that involved meditation in the morning, meditation in the evening, probably some exercise in the afternoon. And I knew when I was going to write my scripts, and I knew when I was going to record my videos. So I know if I want to be productive, that a schedule is important. And so I've kind of found the things that work for me. The earlier I wake up, the more productive my day is, but that's not always the case. So my best day is that I wake up, around probably 6:30, have some lemon water, some warm lemon water, do some breath work to charge up the system, do a couple exercises to turn on the core so that I'll be using the right muscles throughout the day. Then I'll go walk outside for half an hour.
What breathing exercise do you do?
I just kind of do whichever ones I want. Like sometimes I'll do a Wim Hof breathing. Sometimes I'll do alternate nostril breathing. I've messed with Breath of Fire a bit.
So to explain what Wim Hof is to people, you should watch the Wim Hof documentary on Vice.
Yeah.
And then you should definitely listen to him on Joe Rogan or Tim Ferriss. Tim Ferriss if you're more into like logical, on-point type of stuff. Rogan if you're more into like tangents and randomness. But Wim Hof has created a breathing method combined with cold exposure to do feats such as climbing Everest in his shorts, running a marathon in the desert with no water, having scientists inject him with a virus and him being able to fight it off.
Wow.
Which is insane. And then the scientists were just like, oh, you're an outlier. So Wim said, okay, no, give me a week and I'll teach it to 10 students and they'll be able to do it. And he did it to the 10 students and they were able to fight off the virus, whereas no one else was able to do it. So the Wim Hof breathing technique is super fascinating dude, what he's able to do. But anyways, go with what you were saying. Sorry.
Oh, okay. So yeah, then I would go for a 30-minute walk to meet with my Sifu and the people I practice Tai Chi with. And we'd practice from about 7:30 till 9 o'clock. Then we go for dim sum breakfast, which is about an hour. Then I go to the spa where I do some swimming or some exercise. Sometimes I'll sauna, sometimes I'll steam, sometimes I'll hot tub, sometimes I'll just take a nap, whatever I feel called towards, but all those options are there.
Man, I just go crazy if I was up for like 5 hours and didn't get anything done. Like anything done in air quotes. You can't see me air quoting.
Yeah. Well, the whole thing is, right, I'm cultivating my energy and I'm taking care of my physical body with the exercise. And then I guess I'm dealing with my emotional body by going to the spa and taking care of myself. And then I'm in the right place to go to my like mental space and then create content or do private coaching sessions. So kind of from like 2 to 6 is when I would like to get my work done. And since I'm coming from such like a clean place, a clear mind, but also really energized and really inspired from doing things I feel good about and being around beauty and whatnot, then I do really good quality work. And I figure 4 hours of really good quality work is worth 12 hours of, just kind of half their work or whatever.
Right.
And
I've experienced this in poker where
yeah,
I played 1 day a week for 2 years, and I just
yeah,
coached every other day.
yeah,
And every time Sunday came around, I was really excited.
yeah,
And I put in 10 to 15 hours of study that week, and I had all these ideas to work on. And I played my A game every single session,
yeah,
and I won like 50-60% of my sessions. My ROI was huge, like
yeah.
70, 80, 90%. And I made more profit than the vast majority of rigs.
Mm-hmm. So what does that make you think?
Like, quality is just everything.
Quality is everything, and when you're not working, you should be resting because that's what gives you the resources to put out good work when you do work.
Right.
Yeah, and then the end of the day, 6 o'clock, I'd either go to a yoga class or meet up with my friends, have some food together, and then just hang out, relax for the evening, and put myself in an environment where I feel grateful. I feel like the effort that I put in throughout the day was worth it because I get to be in the company of people I really love being around and enjoy being with. And it's easy to unwind in that environment and leaves me feeling inspired to wake up and do it again the next day. That's kind of the routine that I'm cultivating because I saw that when I was a bit too free flowy throughout the year, I'm like, okay, time to get back down to business a little bit, but that I want to cover all my bases in my routine, not just make it be about work and output and production, because I've seen what happens to the quality of my work when that's the only thing I do.
Right.
And when
Here's a question. How
yeah,
often do you end a day feeling fulfilled? How often do you end the day feeling like, oh, I could have done more?
when I wasn't taking care of my body, I would say probably 80% of the days I felt that I could have done more. And
Right.
the ironic thing is I would try to do it with more work and more content creation when I was just avoiding the obvious thing that if I just take care of my body, do a little exercise, I'd feel fine. So I find it's really about covering the bases. And since I only added the spa really recently, like I joined it maybe a week and a half ago, because I'm like, if I'm going to be in the city for the winter, I need that sanctuary. And since I've added that, pretty much 9 days out of 10, I wake up feeling fulfilled because I spend time with all the aspects of myself, all the sides of myself, and make sure that everyone gets a little bit of attention.
Right. So I have my. It's so rare that I end a day feeling like I did enough. Like,
Mm.
I always have the feeling like I could have done more, but it's also part of the idea. I mean, I just have so many things, like bases I have to touch. So I have 2 kids,
Mm-hmm.
married. I do
Mm-hmm.
the podcast. I blog. I'm doing the whole problem solving coaching, playing poker, learning about all the things I want to do, meditation, trying to take care of myself, jujitsu. And yeah, I just end every day like, damn, I didn't do X. There's always something that I didn't touch. So always some base I didn't hit.
And you know what? Maybe there always is going to be. And maybe it's about just being okay with that and feeling pretty good if you're covering 5 out of 6 bases because you'll hit the other one the next day. And knowing that it's okay if you miss one in one day. Like you have how many years to do this business? You have how much lifetime to do all of the things that you want to do? What's the rush to get it all done in this short time frame?
Yeah, I think as humans, we're kind of forced to like view life as like our productivity in terms of a day, but it just seems like a really shitty way to do it. A day just isn't enough.
Yeah, I think that's a belief system that we can choose to follow or not.
Absolutely.
Because you can choose to take the long view and look at what you want to accomplish in your life, as opposed to just doing it day by day and week by week. If you do that, you'll find that you get a little bit calmer because you realize you have a lot more time than you think. When it's just day by day, it never seems like we have enough time. That's true. But when we break it down to the weeks and the months and the years and really see, oh, I have a lot of time to work with if I use it effectively, then it's a lot easier to relax, be like, I got this. Maybe it won't happen this week, but I know I'll have it done by the end of the month. And like,
All right. So speaking of long term, what's the Evan Jarvis mission statement? What's the end game? Do you have
end
one?
game.
Yeah.
Yeah, I've shifted through a few. The main one is just health and happiness for myself and those around me. I did have a egoic goal for a while of wanting to win the World Series of Poker main event.
I've read about that. Yeah.
Yeah, that was the one. But I was reflecting on it a lot, and I was like, is this my goal? Or did I get this implanted into me by the marketers of Caesars Entertainment and whatnot? And the more I reflected, I'm like, you know what? I think I got brainwashed a little bit. So I'm still down to do all the practices I was doing, because that motivated me to get like super healthy and super aware and super good at the game. And it gave me that drive. But it's such a hard thing to actually achieve, winning one poker tournament with 8,000 people. So, I'm going to keep doing that stuff because it makes me feel good and it makes the others around me feel good too. So that's a good thing. But I don't care if I win that tournament or not, because that's not some like deep down belief that my soul needs to accomplish that mission. That's just some marketing BS that got planted into me.
Right. I think for a decade I had the mindset. The first decade I was just a one-track mind, wanting to be the best in the world.
Yeah.
And then that's one that I dropped as well.
Yeah. Like now I just want to make people happy. So, I've always just wanted to make people smile. I just wanted to make people happy. And I feel that I can do that through playing. I can enjoy my time at the table with people, but also all these healing arts that I'm studying, I can feel a lot better about if I realize my goal is to help people be healthy and happy, as opposed to just some personal pursuit of I have to win a tournament, win $10 million. Because I thought if I won $10 million, I'd be happy. But I found that when I won a tournament for like 160, I didn't feel much happier. So I'm like, well, if 160,000 doesn't do it, I don't think $1 million's going to do it anyway. So I got to shift my focus here.
Maybe you just need to improve your spending game.
Got to know what to ball out on?
Yeah. It's a skill.
Okay. What are the best things to spend $100,000 on?
The best resource is Dan Bilzerian on Instagram, and just try and do as much as you can what he's doing.
Okay. Some people were talking about him yesterday at some party I was at, and they're like, yeah, that guy's fake. There's something going on with him. I'm like, yeah, I think so. But I don't know. I haven't followed any of it. I just know when I tell people I play poker and they don't know anything about poker, they're like, oh, do you know Dan Bilzerian? I'm like, yeah, I remember. Because I remember when him and his brother both had like a decent run in the main event. That was the first time that I remember them being on TV in the poker world.
Right.
Like, I didn't even know about all the Instagram stuff, like any of it.
Right. Yeah, he was on the Rogan podcast. He's actually a pretty interesting dude.
Yeah?
But it seemed like he was telling some pretty significant lies in the podcast, but he seemed like a lot more self-aware and interesting than I expected.
What were you expecting him to bring to the table?
A lot of people hate on him just because he lives this like outrageous type of ball hard hookers and drugs type of lifestyle. Yeah. And I expected him to just be like, yeah, this is the fucking nuts, I'm the man. But he was talking about how there's this kind of compensation he gets because when he For example, if you bought a Ferrari, that experience would be like a 10 for most people, whereas that's like
Yes.
a 5 for him.
Right.
And if you eat at like a super nice restaurant, that's a 10 for you, whereas he has chefs that cook him, 5-star meals all the time. So it was kind of interesting that he was kind of aware of that, and he talked a lot about how sexual the sexual drive and urges kind of control him, and
Okay, so he's like really operating from like the reptilian brain and the kind of
yeah,
baseline desires stuff.
yeah,
Because when you said the thing about the meals, and for him it's only 5 out of 10 instead of 10 out of 10. I mean, isn't it all like if you're playing the comparison game? Yeah, it's all about, is this experience better than the other one? But if your state is just one of like gratitude and appreciation, can't you choose whether something's a 2, a 5, or a 10? And can't you kind of make everything a 10 if you're just like super grateful and super happy that you get to be doing whatever you're doing? Like, what do you think about that?
I think I've done things that would seem incredibly dull and had an amazing time doing it. So,
Yeah.
for example, my wife has like a real job. She's like a realtor. She comes downstairs at like 8:30 in the morning, and I'm outside on my porch. It's a pretty decent sized porch.
Yeah.
If you want like a picture of it, it's like these red wood planks and like the white fencing or whatever. And
Oh, gorgeous.
yeah, I'm just sitting literally in my underwear, no shirt on. I'm throwing around like acorns and like just have the most blissed out face you can imagine.
Yeah.
And she just looks at me and just thinks like I'm the craziest person on the planet.
Yeah.
And then
You,
then I take my kids out, and they woke up, so they're like with me, and we're just like sitting there throwing around acorns, having like the greatest time. And I think like that experience is on par with like taking your kids to Disney World or whatever, which I've done.
yeah. I'm with you. Like, you're just playing. I think if your emotional state is at a high, then you're having a 10, no matter what you're doing. So like it's all about the
I,
emotional state.
I've been thinking though, like I don't know, maybe is meditation kind of like is it like a drug where you constantly have to chase the higher and higher levels of bliss or enlightenment? Like, does that low level, not do it for you anymore? Are you always,
There are definitely people who chase the spiritual high the same way people chase anything else. That's definitely a thing. But again, it's about not getting caught up in comparison and not getting caught up in achievement, and just focusing on feeling and thankfulness and appreciation. And when your mindset is one of thankfulness, when your attitude is one of gratitude, you just always have more than enough. You're always happy. You're always just enjoying like what you're doing, and there isn't that same desire like I need more, because you're just like, no, I have everything I need. I'm
right?
great. And if you want to try a higher level, that's cool, but there isn't the need to do that. But that's a mind shift. And again, that's like when people are like, oh, I'm getting into meditation, I'm so spiritual, bro, and they're trying to show all their friends how spiritual they are. Yeah, they're going to need to go to the highest level because they're trying to do it to appease other people.
Right.
They're not doing it for the real reason of just feeling what's going on inside, so we can like fine tune it.
You touched on a Stoic principle there. So
Did I?
yeah, so they talk about healthy and unhealthy desires, and so their definition of an unhealthy desire is that if you don't get something, and it makes you worse off, and you feel bad because you don't get it, like that's an unhealthy desire. That's something that's going to lead to pain and suffering.
Mm.
And a healthy desire is, wanting the thing, but not really caring, not having it affect you one way or the other, whatever
Yeah,
happens.
is it that idea of being, your outcome, your achievement oriented? How does it go? Basically, like you set goals and you set targets and you want to go for them. But in terms of the actual outcome, whether you get it or not, you're indifferent.
Right. It's kind of like a simple story would be like my granddad, who passed recently, but he was like a pretty simple man in that like on most days he'd be just as happy just wearing like a pair of like crappy jeans, a $10 watch or whatever. But if
Mm-hmm.
he ended up getting something nice, it was like, or wearing something nice, he'd take pride in it and he'd get joy out of it. It would be cool. But
Yeah.
he really wouldn't care at all either way. He didn't care what kind of house he lived in. He liked a nice house, but it didn't matter to him either way, you know.
Yeah. I think it's probably one of those things where sometimes we get our wants confused with our needs, and we think that the things that we want are the things that we actually need, when in reality the needs are pretty simple, pretty basic, and that the wants are the ones that are wild and out there. And it's great if we get them, but we shouldn't be upset if we miss out on a want.
Right. What do you think about, so there's a Stoic idea that if there's something you have where if you lose it, you'll feel bad or you'll suffer, then you don't own that thing. That thing possesses you. So
Mm,
what do you think about that?
that's really interesting. I haven't heard that before, but I like it. I like it because if you can't be without something, then it has control over you, right?
Right.
Um,
And it's kind of interesting because he talks about a lot in like the scope of death. Like if you think about your children or like your loved ones, like those aren't really things you possess. And I mean, it's kind of like morbid to talk about or weird to talk about, but I mean, he obviously thinks like Seneca is kind of
okay.
like the main Stoic philosopher, but he obviously thinks like you're going to kind of suffer, like you're going to suffer like if you lose like loved ones, but like I don't know, to like kind of like that mindset of
Well, what's the mindset you take when you enter a poker tournament?
it depends on what mood I'm in.
Okay. Because I mean, you've been doing that long enough, and you're quite good and quite successful. I would imagine you're not too attached to your tournament life or the particular outcome of a hand or whatever, because it's kind of necessary to make the right decisions, to just be at peace with the fact that it could be over at any minute.
Right. So I think when I'm in a good state, I do not care about that stuff. I don't even care so much about mistakes. Like if I make mistakes, that's just part of the game and then I move on. When
Yep.
I'm unconfident in my game, or if I know I didn't put in the study, if I don't feel like I deserve to win, if I'm not interested in playing, I
Hmm.
get really angry at mistakes, I get really angry at the outcome, and the session does not go very well.
Mm. And
And
and why do you?
I still experience both.
Yeah. When you have the second one, the latter one,
Hmm.
where you're like the results are very important, is it because there's something else that you should have done, and if you don't do it, you can only kind of justify that you missed it because you're like, well, I made like 10K today, so I can justify that I missed that. But if I don't make 10K, I have no good excuse for why I didn't do some
You know,
essential thing.
that could be it, because, like, if money didn't exist, if money wasn't a factor, I wouldn't be playing poker, really.
At all? Do you think you
Not
would?
at all, but less than once a week I'd be playing.
Okay. Now this is Daryl now, but Daryl 7 years ago would still have been playing lots of poker if there were no money, right?
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, Daryl 7 years ago, Daryl loved that game.
Yeah. Daryl grinded hard 7 years ago.
I really want to know. Okay, do you remember the first video you had on Poker X Factor?
Right.
I think it was like your F tops run.
Right.
And you're crushing it. You're stealing like crazy. Most of the time they 3-bet you, you're folding, but you're just stealing. And then there's one spot where your stack just like grows hugely, and Sheets or Backs or whoever was reviewing is like, yeah, we lost that hand, but nothing really important happened. Do you remember that spot or what the hand was, or just that part in the video where it's just like you magically have double your stack?
There was a big hand where I think I called with ace high, putting someone on like a big draw or something like that. Or I called with like a weak pair when I put the guy on like 2 overs and a big draw, getting like 1.5 or 2 to 1. And I just went for it and called, which was probably like a bad ICM error in hindsight. But it was something like that, yeah.
Yeah, nice. And it worked out.
Yeah.
Nice.
It's really interesting because I think I have just as many people message me about Poker X Factor video that I did, 12 years ago or whatever, than like my PPE videos.
Maybe it was the marketing. I mean, because when they came out, it was like there was Card Runners and there was Poker X Factor, and that was it. Like I heard there was another site called Real Poker Training, but to me it was if you play tournaments, you're a Poker X Factor. If you play cash games, you're a Card Runners, and like that was it.
Right.
Those were the two. Whereas now it's a lot more diluted. I don't even know how many training sites there are right now, but I think it's a lot.
Yeah. I think there's a lot, yeah.
Yeah.
Run It Once is the huge one.
Yeah. I think Doug's site's pretty good too. Upswing Poker. I joined it when it first came out, and I was with them for a month. I went through the lab, and I thought it was well organized, but I don't know what they've been doing since then, because I've honestly like pretty much been away from the internet for 75% of this year, I think.
Whoa, that's awesome.
Yeah, I have amazing people who help me with Twitter, like those hilarious poker gifs and stuff. I'm not the genius behind that. I got a guy who really knows that stuff and knows the humor, and so he kills it with that. But yeah.
That's awesome.
I
need to get someone for that, because I spend a lot of time like doing my own Twitter and Facebook stuff, which is like necessary part of the game. But
yeah, well, as an entrepreneur, like at first you got to do everything. The first few years I was doing everything. I don't think I hired help until 2014. So that's 75% of the way through everything. I was doing all the Twitter, all the YouTube, all the Facebook, everything. But once, as you get rolling and as you get momentum, and there's kind of too much on your plate, that's when you can outsource. And I mean, you're a Tim Ferriss guy, right?
Yep.
So you figure out the things that no one else could do but you. And you spend all your energy doing those to the best of your ability. And you delegate the other stuff that, you could do, but someone else could do 90% as effectively. Or in some cases, they could do it better than you because, maybe you're not a graphic designer, but you need good graphics. And because you're focusing on the one thing that only you can do, that brings the highest value to the business, that gives you the most money. You have those extra financial resources to invest in other people who can do something at a super high level, and then that's what really kind of shoots everything to the highest level, where everyone on your team is doing the thing that they're best at and nothing else. So you're getting like triple A game out of every hour that everyone puts in.
Right.
At least I think that's what we work towards.
Right. And I assume the main thing you do is content creation, but anything else?
Yeah, content creation. The biggest thing that I do, I mean, no one really sees it except the people that it affects directly, but I'm like the number one cheerleader. I'm like the number one fan, and my thing is kind of feeling what a player will need emotionally to help them stay in a positive state of mind, to help them stay motivated, and to give them that.
when it's completely unexpected. Like if you saw the messages that I was sending Griffin during the main event this summer, you'd be like, oh wow, I didn't think that was like a move. Like I remember Lee Davey reached out to me and was like, hey, I know there's like 100 people left in the main. Can you tell me who you think's going to win so I can write an article? And I was like, sure. Griffin Benger, I'll even give you 10 reasons why. And after I wrote the 10 reasons, I'm like, you know what? I think this would be a good thing for Griffin to wake up to in the morning. So right before I went to bed, I sent him that list of 10 things. And when he woke up on day 6, he read and he's like, oh, okay. Yeah, I could make the November 9. All right, this is why. So little things like that, like just really sending like heartfelt messages and helping people kind of feel their emotional power, since most poker players are pretty heady, and just giving them access to that, I think is what I do best and what has the biggest impact. But again, that's very behind the scenes, and that's very subtle, and that's very individual as opposed to kind of the mass marketing stuff. So it kind of goes unnoticed, but I think that's what my biggest strength is, my greatest offering is.
That's actually a thing I dig about problem solving coaching that I do. It's like I'll do the session with people and then just constantly checking on them every few days, seeing how they're doing. I don't do too much words of encouragement, but every once in a while I do. And just like quick, like, you know, I'll send a link that will help, or like a quote or something like that. I really dig that, you know?
Yeah, like people, I remember some guy was asking me about coaching. He's like, oh, I don't know if I'll get my money's worth because I haven't done this before. And I'm like, the value isn't even, like, you get value from the coaching session, but it's that surprise follow-up email that you don't expect, where, you know, coach has had time to think through all the problems that you threw at him and has time to go through his resources, and then he just kind of sends you this summary of a prescription of little things you could do, and that's where the real value is.
Right. So yeah, there's this one guy, and you know, he was very heady. He overthought kind of everything to the point of absurdity. Like he'd go to he'd go to the supermarket and he'd try to pick the best tomato and spend like 5 minutes on it.
Yeah.
And we'd constantly have this interaction on Skype. I'm like, what are you doing today? He dodges the question. I ask him the next day, what are you doing today? He dodges the question. The third day, I'm like, what are you doing today? He dodges the question. Then I'm up front, why do you keep dodging this question? I asked you a simple thing and you can't tell me what you're doing.
Yeah.
And then he starts to list what he's going to do. The next day I ask him, what is he doing today? He tells me what he's going to do. He like starts going and doing it. And then, you know, a week or two later, and constant kind of follow-ups, he just builds up this momentum. And, you know, he just sends me a message like, thanks for all your help. I'm like implementing all this stuff. I created this like teaching group and doing all this shit. It was really cool just constantly doing that repetition and getting someone to kind of take action, you know?
Yeah, because when you're a coach, a big thing that you're offering them is accountability. They don't want to necessarily be accountable for themselves for whatever reason, and that's one of the reasons they reach out for a coach. So it's your job to kind of handle that accountability and responsibility and kind of put it on them, like, are you actually doing what you said you were going to be doing? Those checkups are very powerful. But one thing you mentioned about how he was really heady and it kept him from making decisions, I think that's the easiest thing people who are very heady can do to get out of that zone is just take action. Yep. As soon as you're taking action, you're in the body, you're in the physical, and you're out of your head. So I think that's why Tony Robbins, all those guys, like at the end, you know, they'll give you all this information, all this good stuff, and then they'll finish it with an exercise so that you will actually take action. Because
I never do those fucking exercises.
I didn't do them either. For the first year or two, I did self-development. I never did the exercise. And then I'd be like, oh, I'm so tired. Why am I so tired? It's like, oh, because you filled your brain with stuff and you didn't integrate it and move it into your body. So it's just stuck there. And that's when you get the brain fog and the heavy brain. But as soon as you take action, you're moving the energy out of your mind and into your body, which, you know, has a lot more room.
And that's how you could just kind of clear things out.
Yeah, I think that's a important reprogramming thing that people need from school, because you learn to just
Oh,
ingest all this information just even before you need it. But when you become an adult learner, there isn't any reason to take in information other than you enjoy reading it, I mean, which is fine, or you want to do something. Like a book is to solve a particular problem you have. It's to get you to take action, to help you with something you want to reflect on and think about. You have to do something like with that information. What, even if it's just writing about it or thinking about it or talking about it with a friend or performing an action. You can't just, like, people brag about finishing books, and I do it too. Like, you feel good when you finish a book, but if you're just reading straight through, you're just kind of wasting all this info, and
Yeah.
you're not turning that memory. I mean, it's not just about retention; it's about functional use, retention to the point where you could use that information when you need it. So,
yeah. Yeah, and there's another one of the benefits of teaching is it makes it easier to cycle the information through that you're learning instead of just keeping it stuck there.
right. I love the aspect of being able to read a book on education and then just immediately apply it in a coaching session.
Yeah. Oh yeah, that's the best. It's the best, just being able to make use of it. Um,
All right, so I seen a thing, and I wrote this down. It's super tangent, but
okay.
maybe I read this wrong. What is a yin muscle? Y-I-N, yin muscle. What is that?
No, there's no yin. Well, I mean, there's a whole thing. Yin and yang can be comparisons. So anything that's like more hot is more yang, and anything that's more cool is more yin. So I don't know. There are probably some muscles that are yin relative to the yang, but I think what I said was yin tissues,
Okay,
which are
yeah.
the connective tissues. Have you heard of fascia?
No.
The connective tissue that kind of holds everything together inside our body. Think of like, okay, what is the example they've used? It's so long since I took the course. Okay, think of your body. Your internal body is being wrapped in shrink wrap.
Wrapped in what?
Like shrink wrap. You know the shrink wrap that they have like at the airports. They wrap your bag and then like vacuum pack where it gets really tight.
Oh, right, okay.
Okay, so pretend you have like that inside your body. Underneath your skin, there's all this shrink wrap everywhere. And every day it gets a little bit tighter. So the importance of stretching and moving is so that shrink wrap, expands back out. If we don't stretch out, eventually the shrink wrap can like suffocate our muscles and suffocate our organs, and that's where the blockages happen and health problems come in. And that's the importance of stretching, and yin practice is just specifically for stretching out that tissue that envelopes everything. Like they've dissected cadavers and just seen this stuff. It's called fascia, is the name they used for it, and it just kind of envelopes everything. So it's important to, and like it can solidify. Like what happened to me was from all the years of sitting, like the fascia in my lower back had the muscles in my lower back had fascialized where they'd become hard and they weren't muscle anymore. They just become this like dead, stiff tissue. And I had to do tons of work with the body work to rehydrate it and remove it and then like move it around and then get it to be functional again, because it just becomes like hard as a rock. And the body, the fascia in the body will restructure based on the positions you sit in on a regular basis day to day. And that's why people can have bad posture that they can't get out of, because the fascia is literally like restructured. Be like, oh, this is hunched over is the default position you want to be in. Okay, we'll adjust for that so we can hold it more easily. Yeah. I think Elliot talks about it in some of his stuff, Elliot Hulse.
Yeah. I think, man, Elliot, it's weird, but I put Elliot Hulse in like, I have very few heroes, but Elliot is one of them. His information is just so different than so many others, and his ability to like intellectualize it and speak intelligently about it, like I kind of put him on on the level of people like Tim Ferriss and like Ralph Waldo Emerson and stuff.
Yeah, definitely. Have you ever looked into his mentor, Paul Chek?
No, how do I spell that? 'Cause I'm gonna...
Paul, Paul, and then Chek, Chek. He also has a YouTube channel now, and he's the one who Elliot got a ton of his information from. And I've taken his coaching program, and that dude's on point. That guy knows a lot when it comes to health and wellness.
How much have you invested in your development, if you don't mind me asking?
Or are you talking like money or time?
Both.
Okay. I mean, like the courses themselves aren't that expensive. Like the life coaching course was probably like, I don't know, 800. The Reiki courses I've done were like, I don't know, a few hundred. Massage training was a couple hundred. Like none of the workshops are really expensive, and none of the books are really expensive. It's really more about putting the time into them.
Right.
I'm trying to think of like the most expensive course I've done in that field, and I just...
Okay, because I thought maybe you were in like the tens of thousands or something.
No, like some of my friends were like, "Oh, you gotta go to Tony Robbins thing, man. You could totally be a Tony Robbins coach." Like I see it, I'm like 10 G's. Like I'm pretty sure I've already learned most of what's going to be in that workshop. Like I don't think I need to go spend 10,000 for it. Like I usually buy like $500 programs, go to workshops that are between 3 and 7 days, and it'll cost like maximum $1,000. It doesn't require investing a lot of money to get like you can get the same information for a lot less if you don't look to the most like decorated person in the field. Like I feel like when you look for the decorated people, that's where they can charge like a really high price tag. But most of the information is just like ancient spiritual wisdom. Like if you read like the Tao Te Ching or the Bhagavad Gita, or like study like the tarot and like Egyptian mythology and stuff, like you can get all this info for nothing, man. Like a deck of tarot cards is like $20, and there is so much ancient wisdom in there, it's insane.
Right. Yeah, I've read the Tao Te Ching, which is a really cool book, but I haven't read the Bhagavad Gita. I have to pick that up.
I got through about half of it, and I was like, I don't know that I'm ready for this yet. For me, the tarot cards were really good for me. Because, being a poker player, I like cards. I've always liked cards.
Right.
And when I was studying in school, I liked flashcards. So to get these cards that, what I really like about tarot is they have the pictures, so it's very vivid and stimulates, again, I think it's the right brain. I may be getting them mixed up, but it stimulates the creative visual side. And then there is text in the book that comes with the deck that has the written information. So you stimulate both sides of the brain and retain the information a lot better. But after looking at so many numbers from Poker Tracker and just reading so much text, I really needed pictures in my life. And it was nice that tarot cards and all these other decks that I use include pictures in the learning method.
Right. So I think I had two very limiting beliefs that have held me back. Even to this point, they hold me back to a lesser extent.
Okay.
So, and they're basically the same part. So one is this belief of like wanting to do it on my own, this egotistic idea of it's cooler if I do it on my own. Like poker, I went a whole decade without ever getting a coach, and the one time I had a coach, I kind of just argued with him relentlessly, wanting to be right. And it was really silly because I never played Heads Up Cash, and I got Ryan Fee as my coach and backer. And like it was a great situation. It was like ground floor because it was when Ryan Fee and just started backing Doug Polk, and I was the second guy he started backing.
Wow.
And me and Doug Polk were both playing like 2-4. But I ended up blowing up the situation just because I didn't listen in coaching sessions.
Yeah.
And I did a lot of stupid shit. Like, I mean, the dumbest thing I done was like I busted my bankroll, and
Mm-hmm.
instead of telling him, I decided I have like 1K left. I'm gonna try and win it back, and didn't tell him for like a week. And then a week later, I'm like, hey, I have I had no money in my account. So he's just like, you're in 10K makeup. Just give me like 500, and you could just buy out of this thing. I'm like, okay.
Good deal. Good deal for you.
Right. So that is one example of like ego getting in my way, not accepting help, not wanting help. And
Yeah.
I think it's the idea of like I'd be down to read books and get help like that, but to give someone money to help me was just not something I was willing to do. I didn't want to admit that I like needed this. I don't know, it just felt more personal or something.
Yeah, is it like you didn't want to admit that you didn't have all the answers and that someone might know more than you did? And in like signing up for a course, you're basically acknowledging, okay, this person knows more than I do right now.
I think it was a bit of that, and it was also this guy doesn't know enough. This is going to be shitty. Like, this is not worth the time. Without, like, ever really giving the person a chance.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, can you think of any like childhood experiences, stuff with family or stuff that happened in, school or in the first 6 years of your life that could lead to you not having a lot of faith in other people or in authority or in teachers?
Right. So, my experience with school was just absolutely awful. And
Yep.
it's going to be. I'm writing a. I hate when people say this, and I hate saying this myself, but I'm writing a book, like how I got into teaching, and the
Mm-hmm.
story starts with just how much I hated school.
Mm-hmm.
My main memory from school was, in seventh grade in language arts, having to write an essay on something, and my last sentence was, language arts sucks, and I like underlined sucks like 100 times until I got to the bottom of the page. And then my second memory was I didn't write. We had these things called agenda books in seventh grade,
Oh yeah, I remember agendas.
and I just refused to write in it or didn't write in it. And so the principal comes in, and my language arts teacher, who I absolutely just hated, it's the dullest thing ever. And they're both sitting in front of me. I'm in the front of the class, and they're both sitting in front of me. The principal is just berating the fuck out of me. And the
Yeah.
last thing she says to me is that I'm just taking up air for other people to breathe. And this was all just based on me not writing the agenda book. Well,
Wow.
I was getting bad grades. So that was probably my first, not wanting help type of thing. And then I dropped out of school in seventh grade and became mostly just self-taught from there, which is a bit of a long story.
Yeah.
And I, even after school, I was mostly independent. I mostly just hung out by myself. I was raised by my grandparents, and I kind of just came home, grinded video games, did my own thing all day, or grinded poker all day,
Mm-hmm.
and not having a dad or a mom, like just this strong identity of independence, of doing it on my own and not wanting help and not getting help. And it's not that I didn't have like good grandparents. Like my granddad was like an amazing dude.
Yeah.
Really, not like it was an interesting dude because I wouldn't classify him as like smart in the logical sense, but in terms of character, it was just interesting because he was so revered and respected.
Yeah.
But for the most part, I always just felt like, hey, I'm doing this thing on my own, and it's like this empowering feeling. But it's most. I think in the long run, it's like a thing that holds you back.
Yeah. And I think like having absent parents definitely leads to that feeling of, okay, I got to do it on my own. I got to fend for myself. Like I can totally relate to that. My mom was manic depressive, so she was pretty unstable. And my dad was just working so hard at the law firm to be able to provide for my sister and I, that I kind of was on my own too. So I kind of had to figure things out on my own. And like you, I was able to make it work. And so when you make it work, you're like, well, why would I switch the program? It's working for me, so it's all good. But I think at some point in life, everyone kind of wakes up to the fact that, okay, I could do it on my own, but it would be a lot easier if I enlist the help of others. And also, it would be a lot more enjoyable because, we're social creatures, and when we know that we're understood by other people, it is just the greatest feeling ever. So to put ourselves in a position where we can actually be understood, where we can be vulnerable and have it be okay because there are other people out there who want to help us, it just makes everything seem a little more okay and a little less hard. And I have always had a pretty tough time with authority, with deferring to other people, with admitting that I didn't know everything. But acknowledging the reality of the situation is the only way that we can really initiate change. And I just had to accept, there are a lot of things that I don't know about, and I'm going to have to enlist the help of other people to figure them out. And my life could be a lot more efficient. My life could be more streamlined. I could have more time to enjoy myself and do the things I love if I'm working with a team instead of on my own. I'm pretty sure all great things in history, the great cities, the great, like most of the great things.
Wasn't just one guy.
Yeah. If we want to do great things, we got to come together. But in that system that we'll be a part of, but we can choose it as opposed to just falling into the classic system that's going on. We could choose to play a role that matches our highest good. So we're still living our highest potential, but that we don't have to do everything. Like we don't have to do things that just don't play to our strengths. That's why there are different people and like different types of people, men, women, artistic people, and logical people. Like we're meant to develop our strengths and then come together to help each other.
Right. So I was, here's an example. I was struggling with meditation for 8 months. And I hate the word struggling, but, I'd sit down and just be not really into it. When your mind races and you don't want to bring your attention back, you're just like, kind of just daydreaming and being happy, just like whatever. Zero effort, It's hard to say why it was bad, and I understand, like, effort isn't exactly the thing, but it was definitely bad, right? And it wasn't consistent. But I just, after 8 months of, like, trying to figure out what's going on, I just hit up my buddy who's, like, really into meditation. And we had a 20-minute discussion, and I just had, like, super simple fix to the problem. Like, I realized I'm meditating first thing in the morning when I'm super groggy, and I just don't have the energy for it. And I was meditating on the floor, so it would be super uncomfortable. And he's like, just get a seat cushion from your couch. And just a really simple conversation and really simple method. And it transformed my meditation back to where it used to be, where I'm able to kind of create those, I don't know exactly, but you know what I mean. It's better.
I know what you mean. And like, how much time did that save you?
Right.
And then and like beyond the time, because I don't like to just think of time, but like how much energy did that save you by not having to be frustrated anymore?
Right.
Like you get so much more peace of mind. You get so much more quality of life from just being like, you know what? I'm having a hard time with this. Hey, you're really good at this. Can you help me out? And every teacher, and I think everyone is a teacher, wants nothing more than to have a student show interest and give them the opportunity to teach.
Right.
Like teachers just want to give, and they're just waiting for people to be like, hey man, like, can you help me out with this? And you're actually, I used to be not want to do it because I'm like, oh, I'm like bugging them, I'm taking their time. And it's only recently I realized it's like, well, no, they want to share it. All teachers want to share it. In asking, you're giving a gift if you're going to be open. But one thing I remember writing in my journal, because there was a period where I'm like asking for people's opinion, but then I wouldn't act on it, that's kind of like wasting their time. If I'm going to seek someone's counsel, I should at least, give what they say a try rather than just ruling it out because I don't like how it makes me feel or I don't agree with it.
Right. So I think you touched on an important point, which it should be obvious, but it wasn't to me, is that one of the best things you could do for a person is make them feel like you're interested in them and that they are important. And one of the ways to do that, and there are myriad ways, is seeking their advice and listening to their advice.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and like, why do you think that a therapist or a coach can charge such a high price tag? I think it's because the most rare commodity these days is clear, undivided attention. Having someone who's actually going to listen to you and sit with you 100% through whatever you have to say. And because it's so rare to find that, people will pay top dollar just have someone actually listen to them, right. Actually care about what they have to say, and actually be like, I understand what you're going through.
Right. And it feels kind of fake to me because, like, I know that if, I do a problem-solving session with someone, that if I just, like, listen to them and try and understand and empathize with them, like 99% of the time they're going to be happy, even if I give like zero advice or whatever.
Mm-hmm. Because in those cases, there are a lot of times people aren't looking for a solution to their problem. They just want someone to acknowledge what they're going through so they can feel okay about it. You ever have like someone tell you, this used to happen in my like old relationships where, my girlfriend would be telling me about something bad that happened, and I'm like being the man trying to solve the problem. She's like, no, like she didn't say this. I've later learned that this was the case. She's like, she didn't want me to solve her problem. She just wanted me to acknowledge her pain and her feeling, be like, oh, like, I'm really sorry you had to go through that. That must have been very challenging. And then they're like, okay, I feel understood. I feel okay. Cool. Sometimes it's not about finding a solution. Sometimes it's just about giving them a space to really express what they're feeling instead of keeping it bottled up. You know what I mean?
Right. Yeah, I totally get what you mean. And it's an interesting skill and isn't really talked about. Isn't really taught. It should definitely be taught more, like how to really listen and how to ask questions. And I think there's this mindset of people are uninteresting, and therefore you don't show them interest and you kind of just, half-ass it or something. But I've been thinking about it, and I'm not sure if this is true, but I think if you show that you're interested in a person, they automatically become more interesting. Like, they automatically, like, open up more and really show you who they are. But, like, when you're disinterested, they're just closed off and,
why would someone want to share their gifts with you and their truths with you if you're just going to ignore it? They're not going to waste their time. But if they feel, okay, this person genuinely wants to know my story, yeah, they'll probably tell you the whole thing. Right. Because they know you actually genuinely care. And I guess like you could fake that, but if someone were to fake that a lot, eventually they'd get tired of faking it. So better off to just, if you're really not interested in what someone has to say, just be like, hey, I got somewhere to be, sorry. As opposed to, and people will respect that. One thing that is really important for people to cultivate, I learned this from Elliot Hulse, is the no, is cultivating your no and cultivating your boundaries where you're like, No, I don't have time for that. No, I can't go to that event. No, I don't want to discuss that. And that way, when you say yes to stuff, it means more. And people are like, okay, he genuinely likes this. Let's roll with this. As opposed to, oh, that guy says yes to everything.
Do you give an excuse when you say no?
Sometimes. If I feel that the person needs one, I will. And for my friends who understand me better, I'll just say no. And then they'll just smile and they'll be like, nice, man. Way to know your no. Good on you. Because when I do that, it also reinforces like, hey, dude, you can always say no to me too. And don't feel bad about it. Like I think when people say yes to everything, it comes from insecurity. Because like, oh, if I say no to this person, they might not like me anymore. If that person can't handle you saying no to them, that's not a genuine friend anyway.
Right. Yeah. I remember like explicitly telling my friend, because he'd always just give me excuses as to why he couldn't do things. Just, you don't have to give a reason. Just say yes or no. It's totally fine.
Yeah.
Right. Yeah, I think it has to do with insecurity. Absolutely. So I imagine you have to say no to lots of things. How do you choose what you say yes to and what you say no to?
It's something I got to get better at for sure. I've said yes to a few too many things. Really?
Well, what makes you feel like you shouldn't have said yes to something?
If in my gut I get a feeling that like is just off, if some tension, if I say yes to something and suddenly I feel tense inside, that was a bad decision.
Right.
When you get goosebumps, like you've been in those situations in life where you just know something was a bad idea, a bad thing to commit to. And you're like, okay, like I feel it in my body.
Right.
It's very primal. And when I say yes to the right things, I feel more relaxed. So it's really, I think they call it muscle testing. But if something makes you tense, it's probably not in alignment with you. If something makes you feel relaxed and good, then it is in alignment.
That makes total sense.
Yeah.
I love this like practical way of looking at things, and it's so, I don't know if the right word's far removed, but it's so alien to me, but it just makes so much sense. I think logic and analysis can lead to like people running in a lot of circles, and there's so many variables. There's like infinite variables.
Oh yeah. Yeah, the mind can always just come up with more stuff. The same way the mind's always racing and nothing's ever good enough is because just the mind's infinite. The mind just has access to the infiniteness that is. There's just so much stuff, so much possibility. But this other stuff we're talking about, I mean, this is like our roots. I don't know how long humans have been around for, but that's where, the feeling stuff comes from. That came along way before our brains did. So it's more natural, it's more historical, it's more deeply rooted in us that, we've been using it longer, so we understand it better.
Right. I think for me, it's always going to be a combination of both. I don't think I'd ever want to just be completely intuitive and feeling. Like like my best poker sessions are not completely intuitive. Like when I'm in the zone, it is like this harmony between intuition and like my brain kind of just firing in a very efficient, quick manner, if that makes sense.
Yeah,
but I think maybe that's different for you. I have a feeling like when you're in the zone, it's like there's not even thoughts and you're just like clicking the button, which I've done before, and it's really fascinating because I have these absolutely incredible lines, which I'll never do otherwise, and then I have these absolute awful lines, which I'd never do otherwise.
Yeah, I'm totally with you. And I know like when I was doing a lot of streaming on Twitch and I had to like speak through what I was doing, I was a lot more mechanical and a lot less creative because I had to be able to justify verbally, logically, why I was doing what I was doing. Whenever we're talking,
we take ourselves away from the flow state. That's one of the reasons athletes like to trash talk each other.
Right. And
But I found
it's
that,
too fucking slow.
yeah, and I found that the one time that I'm like, you know what, I'm not going to stream this week. I'm just going to play a session. I fucking killed it.
Right.
Because I was like, oh, I can just do whatever I want to do, and I don't have to explain it, and I can just go with what feels right. And I was playing way outside the box, but it was working. Right. So I've tried both, and I think for when we're talking, you don't want to be just feel, you don't want to be just emotional, you don't want to be just logic. I think for short term in the moment stuff, going with the feel is good, but for long term kind of life planning stuff, that's where we really need to use our logical and our rational and our thinking brain, because it sees stuff that the feels just, they don't get. The feels are moment to moment, right. Whereas the thinking brain can project into the future and project into the past and analyze, and there's definitely value in both.
So you might have seen this in people you coach, or might have experienced this, but a thing I notice is that if you're a quote-unquote feel player, that unless you get rid of the biases or limiting beliefs or negativity or overconfidence, your intuition's going to be off. Like, there are people who always see the negative and stuff, so like their intuitive response is not to make this bluff, not to make this call, not to make that pre-flop raise or something. That's just their go-to. And then there's like the cocky guys who, think they're amazing, and there's like, oh, this play's gonna work, fire, 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 bet, bet, bet. And kind of like you talk about like blockages in the body. I think there's blockages in the mind in terms of like all the biases you can have, and until you clear up all that, your intuition isn't going to be true or free.
Yeah, it's like the first one is like basically looking at the world through a pair of fear goggles, where you've got this lens on that makes everything seem scarier than it is. And the second one you're talking about is like having like beer goggles on, where everything looks better than it is. And it's just like realizing that there is, so long as we have belief systems in place, we're wearing glasses. We have a filter. And the reality that we're seeing is not actually what reality is. It's some slightly altered version of it. And you're right. If you want to play the game at the highest level and live on the highest level, you have to learn to take off the glasses or see situations through 3 or 4 different pairs of glasses, so you can get all the perspectives and then compare them. And that's where having like a coach like you'd be great, where you can show them what they're not seeing, so they can be like, oh, there's that version of it too.
Which side do you think you lean on? Do you think you lean on the everything's gonna work fire, fire, fire side, or the other side?
In poker, I came from the fear place, and Calvin Anderson helped me a lot with that. He's just like, it's gonna work, just do it, just do it, just do it. And in life, I mean, I had the fear goggles for a long time, and then I think I went through phases of overcompensating by going with the super confident, everything's going to work out, it's all sunshine and rainbows. I think my default's more to be stuck in the fear state and the less believing in myself. But
do you feel the overcompensation is more of a mistake or like a natural process?
I think it's a rebalancing. It's just if you're so far on one side of the spectrum, the only way to come back is into balance is to go to the extreme on the other side of the spectrum for a little bit. I think it's just kind of natural, and that's why I feel like it's better to just move a little bit from equilibrium one way or the other, so the rebounds aren't as extreme. But whatever, it happens.
Right.
Yeah. I got a question for you.
Okay.
What is your favorite poker hand you've ever played?
Wow.
Yeah.
The first hand that comes to mind is like this pocket deuces hand at the World Series. So I open, cut off. I think this guy's name is SoCal Pro or something. 3-bets the button. And how does it go? I think, no, it goes open, I 3-bet, and then this guy, like, hijack opens, I 3-bet cut off, button
Yeah.
a small blind 4-bets, and then
Ooh.
the other guy, like, 5-bet shoves or something. And I end up calling with, like, deuces, getting 3.5 or 4-1 somehow.
Whoa.
And this is in the WSOP main event, and it's for, like, heaps of chips, maybe close to, like, chip leader pot or something, I don't remember.
Dude, you're crazy.
Yeah. The dude had pocket kings, and the door card was a deuce. And I just scooped the pot, and then, like, I go to shake the dude's hand, and just, like, gets up off his chair and just storms off and walks away.
Yeah, no chance you're getting that handshake. That's dirty. So were you, of the 3 players, were you the big stack, or were you the short stack, or the middle stack?
It definitely wasn't for all my chips, and I was definitely getting around 4-1 pre, and
Yeah.
it had to do with, like, it wasn't a good play, but it just had to do with the guy who was all in with the pocket kings. I don't know exactly how it went down, but the other player, we were talking when he was away from the table that he has a tell or something. He was mentioning how this guy has a tell, and when he's bluffing, he touches his neck or something like that.
Yeah.
And then in the hand, I see that guy staring at him, and he sees that he touches his neck, and then he re-raises him.
So you know the cold 4-bet is dead money.
Right, that's how I felt, and then I ended up getting it in, and
Okay.
the guy ended up having kings.
Yeah, and sometimes you just got to show the table you don't give a fuck. So after that pot, I imagine you probably ran over the table pretty easily.
Yeah, I got up to, like, I was chip leader on day 5 or day 6. I had a stack up to my chin, and, like, at one of the, insane stack. It was like 4 or 5 in terms of, like, length. It was like 4 or 5 racks long, 4 or 5 racks wide, and no, like 7.
You did
racks.
you did a vertical pyramid, right?
Yeah, vertical pyramid that was just gigantic.
Yeah, I remember seeing you in those World Series episodes that year.
Yeah, so that was my favorite poker hand.
That's a fun one.
What's yours? I assume you have one, because
I don't know if I definitely have a most memorable hand, which also involves getting, like, super lucky. Okay. And I guess, I mean, it just stands out because it was the worst beat I've ever put on someone, and then it catapulted me to having the biggest win of my career. But day 3 of the Falls View Poker Classic earlier this year, 1K buy-in with like 1,400 runners or 1,600 runners. I'd been cruising the whole tournament until the last 2 hours of day 2, where I just started getting some real bad luck, and I finished the day 17 out of 18 or 18 out of 18 with 250K, which, man, what were the blinds? That was probably like 15 blinds or something. And I remember having a dream that night that I was going to double up twice. And in that dream, I also saw that I was going to knock out one of the guys that I used to play underground home games with, which I stopped going to because some unfortunate things happened. And I'm like, I'm going to get my vengeance. So next day, show up, and this guy introduces himself to me. He's like, I'm a friend of your buddy Max. I'm like, cool. Good luck today. And we go to the table. Second hand of the day, the guy from the home game shoves. I got ace king next to act. I call. He's got 7s. We flip. I win. I'm at 500. And I think that's like 28 bigs or something.
Right.
Next hand, the guy who introduced himself to me opens the button. I have ace jack. Now I have ace 10 in the small blind, and Mike Lee is in the big blind. I don't want him to play the pot. He's the toughest player left in the tournament. I feel like I have too much to just shovel it in. So I opt to like 3-bet smallish. And the button calls. Flop is ace, jack, 4. And my pot to stack ratio is real small. I probably have like 2x pot or something.
Right.
So I figure at this point, I'm going to have to go with the hand one way or another. Only thing I guess I'm a little worried about ace queen, but ace king would have got it in pre. Jacks probably would have got it in pre. Slow played ace, I'm worried about ace jack. I bet 40% pot. He calls. And the turn is a king. And I'm like, I have less than pot at this point. So I'm like, okay, I'm going with this hand as I decided when the flop came down. I'm going with this hand. And I go all in. And he calls pretty quick. And I'm like, fuck, you got ace jack, eh? And he's like, yeah, I got ace jack. And I'm like, okay. And I table my hand. He doesn't see it. And the river comes a queen.
Wait, what is your hand? I thought you had ace jack.
I have ace 10.
Oh, you have ace 10.
And he's got ace jack, and it's ace jack 4.
Right.
Turn king, river queen. And he just looks, he's like, do you have ace 10? I'm like, yeah. He's like, what fucker? I guess you're just destined to win this tournament. And I'm like, yeah, I think I am. And once that put me up to $1 million, which put me in third, and I just was like, I'm not going to blow this. And I just played a really, really appropriate approach for the rest of the way. Ended up chopping it. But a funny part was right before the hand, Max comes over the table, and he's like, good luck, Evan. And his buddy, who had introduced himself, was like, man, can't you wish me good luck too? And he's like, nah, sorry, man, I got a piece of Evan's, so I got to root for him today. And then that hand goes down. And honestly, the whole tournament, I just felt like I was blessed. I felt like I had like angels in my corner or something. The run of cards I was getting, the spots that were coming, I'm just like, these cards are coming out of like another universe. This is just my destiny to win this thing.
You got that Fedor Holst run good.
Yeah. And then when that hand happened, I'm like, yep, this is some divine intervention stuff going on. I don't know if it's the chanting or the intention setting or whatever I've been listening to, but I guess I'm going to keep doing it because it seems to be working. And you know how, like, when you're running good, your confidence gets so high, too. So you make all those little check raise bluffs and those little light 3-bets and the moves that if you weren't as confident, you wouldn't do. And since people are seeing you running good, they're more fearful of playing with you. So everything just works more easily. Like, you're more willing to take chances and everything's working. Yeah, that was kind of what was going on in that tournament.
I had a top 5 like favorite hand and a top 5 worst hand.
Okay.
In the same tournament. Well, actually, the nut low worst hand of my poker career.
Okay.
In the same tournament. So one hand, I 3-bet 3 deuce off from the small blind. GTO.
Sounds like something you would do.
Right. Yeah. Big blind, instant 4 bets. So we're down to 15 players in the huge W coop that's like 550K to first.
Okay.
I was like, oh, he min 4-bet, instant 4-bet. There's no way he could do this on purpose. So I click.
Oh my god, he got you with the fake misclick?
Yeah, I got me with the fake misclick. I click call. God. Flops like 3 deuce X. I just check, get it in. He has pocket aces, and I get a huge double.
Oh, nice.
Yeah. And then I'm 4-handed in the tournament. Guaranteed 200K.
Yeah.
My makeup is 190K at this point. I have 25 million. Hustler 16 has 25 million.
Yeah.
Third has 2 million. Fourth has 2 million. And I get 4th place.
Oh my god.
So instead
That's how Sonny got all the money?
Yeah. So instead of just being like, let's wait for these guys to bust and play good ICM strategy, I'm like, I have position on Hustler. I'm going to make his life fucking miserable. And Hustler was like not backing down. It was like 3-bet, 4-bet, 5-bet, 3-bet, 4-bet, 5-bet.
Yeah.
And then I get dealt pocket queens. I'm like, fuck yeah. 3-bet, 4-bet, 5-bet shove. He has pocket kings.
Ooh.
Good game me. 4th place.
And what were the blinds at this point? Because if you tell me they were like 10K, 20K, whatever, but if blinds are like 80, 160 or something, then those 2 million stacks are about to bust, right?
Yeah, they didn't have that many big blinds. Like, they had, like, under 20, I'd say.
Shit. Daryl, your ego got the best of you, man.
Yeah, absolutely.
I think I think that's a common thing in poker, though. A lot of, like, I don't know if you played for profit or to satisfy your ego, but I think there are a lot of people who play poker to try to, like, prove something, to prove, like, their worth or their manliness. So
Yeah.
they'll forget about the money stuff, too.
It was one of the, like, the first things that got me attention in life.
Yeah.
So it was definitely, like, something to prove.
Yeah.
Other interesting hand is 5 left, W Coupe main event, 17 years old. Everyone,
Wow.
yeah, everyone agrees to chop with 5 left, and except for me. So I'm guaranteed 200K at this point. I would get 440K or something like that.
Yeah.
And I was like, fuck that. We're gonna play to win. And then,
Such a 17-year-old move.
like one orbit later, button opens. I rip 20 bigs with 8-3 offsuit, and my opponent tanks for like a minute and calls me with like ace jack, and I bust.
Huh. Man, the shit that people do.
Yeah.
It's hilarious.
So
But I bet that crazy, seemingly reckless style is what got you to the final table with a good chip stack in the first place, right?
yeah, absolutely. Yeah. But
You'll live by the sword, die by the sword.
that's like, when you want to be aggressive, you have to like walk the line. That's just like not walking the line. It's just pushing it, revving it to the max.
Yeah, you want to walk the edge of the cliff. You don't want to jump over it.
Right. So I usually end with some questions. At this point, I got like another session thing going on soon.
Yeah, fire them off. I gotta eat some food in a bit.
Right. What do you love? And when I ask this question, the less obvious, like the better. Like obviously, I know you love poker and like Gripsed. So like, what do you love?
Probably the breath of life. Just breathing and just being alive. This whole beautiful experience that we all get to go through. It's pretty cool. Just that I get to be alive, that I get to be here at all. And then, family, friends, and all the experiences are a nice bonus, but just the very gift of life itself, I have a deep, profound love for.
Awesome. Cool answer.
Yeah. And I've never thought about that before. I like that you put me on the spot.
Right. I think it's an interesting question. Like, ask anyone that question, and you immediately change their mind state. There's no way you could be upset unless, like, you can't think of anything, I guess.
Yeah.
And the question upsets you. What's your breakfast like? What do you do for breakfast? Or first meal, rather?
If I go to Qigong, I'm having dim sum, which would be like a fish congee, and if whatever I'm in the mood for. If I'm making food for myself, wow, because I've been shifting so much lately. It's been quinoa, eggs, and avocado probably. I also had a phase where I did lots of smoothies. Still trying to find the right. The right thing for me, but we're experimenting. Cool. Oh, another breakfast that's like super good that I haven't had in a while is coconut milk with chia seeds and berries and cashews and macadamia nuts.
Whoa, that sounds legit.
Yeah. Oh man, you get that chia seed pudding going, it is unreal.
I think some cinnamon would go well in that.
Cinnamon would be a very good addition to that for sure.
Right.
For sure.
All right. How old are you?
I am 31 right now.
All right. 10 years ago, 21-year-old self, you could give yourself like a few lines of advice. What would that be?
Relax, enjoy the ride,
You don't have to do it all as soon as you think you do. Life is going to unfold naturally for you. Just stay there for the ride, be present, and enjoy it. Because, yeah, if you get ahead of yourself, you're going to miss the moment. And if you keep fixating on the past, you're going to prevent yourself from actually getting to experience what's right in front of you. I probably tell myself that all the good stuff is right there. You just got to go outside the house and connect with the dance of life that's awaiting you to come join.
I feel like you're giving that advice like directly to me. Like that's like the exact advice I needed, to be honest, at this point in my life.
Maybe we had a very similar experience, and maybe that's why we both do poker coaching, among other things. Right. I think there's a lot of parallels for us, probably. So, yeah.
Right. Man, I enjoyed the hell out of this conversation. Thanks for coming on. It's a lot of fun.
Thanks so much for having me, Daryl. It's been an absolute treat, absolute pleasure. I think you're a great host, man, and I hope you continue to do what you do.
All right, here's the moment of truth where we see if the podcast recorded properly.
Okay.
So if you guys want to find out more about Evan, you guys can go to gripsed.com. That's GRIPSED. He's also on Twitch, twitch.tv/Gripsed. On Twitter, I think he's at Grips. I hate this word, Grips Poker. On YouTube, if you just Google fucking Gripsed, you'll find a lot of his stuff. Peace.